you are probably poorer than you should be. And the reason has almost nothing to do with how much you earn. That's a hard sentence to sit with. But stay with it for a moment, because somewhere between your first paycheck and right now, something went wrong. Not catastrophically, nothing dramatic, just a slow, quiet leak. Money came in and money went out, and the gap between those two numbers never quite closed the way you expected it to. And every time you looked around at the people near you, the ones with the new cars and the renovated homes and the European trips, the gap felt even wider. Here's what no one told you about those people. 87% of individuals earning under $100,000 a year who drive luxury vehicles are financing a lifestyle that their income cannot actually support. The average American credit card now charges nearly 24% annual interest. Total U.S. credit card debt exceeded $1.2 trillion in 2024. The Instagram post from Santorini doesn't come with a footnote explaining the balance transfer that funded it. The kitchen renovation photo doesn't mention the retirement account that was rated to pay for it. The performance is the product, and you've been consuming it without realizing you're the target. There is a different kind of person. You wouldn't notice them. That's the point. They drive a used Honda, they live in a house that looks like every other house on the street, they shop at the same stores as everyone else, eat at the same restaurants, wear clothes with no visible branding. Their financial life generates no signal whatsoever. And they are in complete silence, accumulating wealth at a rate that would make most high earners uncomfortable to learn about. These people have solved a problem that most people don't even know exists. Wealth and the appearance of wealth are not just different things. They are, in most cases, opposites. The money you spend performing financial success is money that will never compound. And compounding is the only mechanism that actually builds fortunes. Not salary, not bonuses, not hustle, compounding. Silent, patient, exponential compounding. Consider the arithmetic directly. A $55,000 luxury car loses roughly 35% of its value in the first 3 years. That same $55,000 placed in a low-cost index fund tracking the S&P 500, which has averaged 10.4% annually over the past century, becomes approximately $380,000 over 20 years. The car is nearly worthless by then. The investment has grown sevenfold. One decision, made once, produces a $380,000 difference in outcome. Not because of intelligence or discipline or sacrifice. Because of direction. Jeff Bezos drove a Honda Accord. Mark Zuckerberg drives an Acura TSX. Sergey Brin and Larry Page drove Toyota Priuses. These are not men who couldn't afford alternatives. These are men who understood that a car is a depreciating liability, and that capital allocated to depreciating liabilities is capital permanently removed from the compounding engine. The Millionaire Next Door research, one of the most comprehensive studies ever conducted on American wealth, found the average millionaire lived in a home valued around $320,000 at the time of the study, approximately $650,000 adjusted for today's dollars. Not a mansion, not a statement property. A normal house in a normal neighborhood, indistinguishable from the homes of people earning half as much. And the property tax differential between a modest home and a luxury one can reach $10,000 to $20,000 annually. Over 30 years, that's $300,000 to $600,000. Invested rather than paid, that money compounds into something extraordinary. Paid? It's simply gone. Now let's talk about what's happening in your head when you scroll. Researchers now call it money dysmorphia. A documented condition in which people feel financially inadequate despite being objectively stable because they're measuring their internal reality against other people's external performance. A recent study found 95% of Americans experiencing money dysmorphia are negatively impacted financially as a direct result. 43% of Gen Z and 41% of millennials report being affected. And here is the detail that should stop you cold. 37% of those affected had over $10,000 in savings. 23% had over $30,000. They were, by any reasonable measure, doing fine. The algorithm told them otherwise. And they believed it, and they spent accordingly. The feed doesn't show you the 3 a.m. insomnia. It doesn't show the minimum payment on the card that funded the trip. It shows you the moment, and your brain categorizes that moment as someone else's baseline. That categorization error is not free. It costs you money every single month in purchases made to close a gap that doesn't actually exist. The Federal Reserve reports median American net worth at roughly $193,000. But the age-based breakdown is where it gets genuinely uncomfortable. Empower's 2026 data shows median net worth for Americans in their 20s is $6,600, 30s $23,000, 40s $67,000, 50s $260,000. These are medians. Half of all Americans at each age are below these numbers. And most of them are not below these numbers because they earned too little. They're below them because the money that passed through their hands was redirected toward performance rather than accumulation. The time cost of this is not recoverable. A 25-year-old contributing $500 monthly to a retirement account at 7% average returns accumulates over $1.2 million by 65. A 35-year-old doing the same thing ends up with $580,000. Starting at 45, roughly $270,000. The difference between starting at 25 and starting at 35 is not $620,000. It's every year of compounding on that $620,000 for the rest of your life. The delay doesn't just cost you the growth. It costs you the growth on the growth, forever. In 2026, the IRS raised the 401k contribution limit to $24,500. Catch-up contributions for those 50 and older bring it to $32,500. A super catch-up provision for ages 60 to 63 allows up to $35,750 total. IRA contribution limits rose to $7,500. Health savings accounts allow $8,300 for families with high deductible plans. Every dollar flowing into these accounts reduces your taxable income by exactly that amount. At a 24% marginal rate, a $20,000 contribution saves $4,800 in taxes this year while simultaneously building wealth that exists entirely outside the visible economy. No one sees it. No one measures it. No one adjusts their expectations of you based on it. That invisibility is not a side effect. It's a feature. Because here's what visibility costs you that no one calculates: the designer logo on your bag, the watch that catches light across the conference table, the car keys with the premium emblem placed on the restaurant table. Each of these is a beacon, and beacons attract cost. Social dynamics research consistently demonstrates that people unconsciously calibrate their expectations based on perceived wealth. The more affluent you appear, the more others expect you to cover dinners, absorb shared expenses, provide larger tips, fund family requests, give premium gifts. You pay a social tax on every signal you emit, and that tax is completely invisible on any budget spreadsheet. The person who appears wealthy pays this tax constantly. The person who appears ordinary doesn't pay it at all. Over a lifetime, the difference is not trivial. Meanwhile, the investment strategy that actually builds wealth is almost aggressively boring. Low-cost index funds, consistent contributions, no trading, no timing, no stories. Research shows that if you miss just the 10 best trading days in the S&P 500 over a 15-year period, your returns fell from roughly 10% to about 3%. Miss the 30 best days, and you went negative. The best days cannot be predicted. They cannot be timed. The only way to capture them is to stay invested continuously, through every correction, every crash, every moment when selling feels like the only rational choice. Boring, patient, invisible, effective. And then there is the social environment question, which is perhaps the most expensive conversation most people never have with themselves. Your spending is shaped more by who surrounds you than by what you earn. If your social circle vacations internationally multiple times a year, drives cars that lease for $800 a month, and dines at restaurants where the bill for two crosses $200 without effort, maintaining proximity to that circle will cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars over your lifetime. Through direct spending, through the gradual upward drift of your baseline, through the opportunity cost of capital that flows into consumption rather than compounding. This is not an argument for isolation. It's an argument for honesty about what certain relationships actually cost. The Wall Street Journal has profiled what researchers call the stealthy wealthy, and the most common source of wealth among the top 1% is not investment banking or technology startups. It is ownership of medium-sized regional businesses, auto dealerships, beverage distributors, dental practices, commercial real estate, unglamorous, local, practical businesses that generate substantial cash flow entirely outside any spotlight. Self-employed people represent less than 20% of the American workforce, but account for nearly 2/3 of millionaires. The wealth is real. The visibility is near zero. That combination is not coincidental. The United States now has nearly 25 million millionaires. 80% of them are first-generation wealthy. They built it themselves, from ordinary incomes in ordinary neighborhoods, driving ordinary cars. The average millionaire today is around 50 years old and looks, in almost every external dimension, like someone with a fraction of their actual net worth. They understood something that takes most people a lifetime to grasp, if they grasp it at all. The expensive part of being wealthy is not building wealth, it's performing it. And every year you spend performing it is a year the compounding engine sits idle. We are living in a moment of maximum financial performance pressure. Algorithms reward visible consumption. Influencer economics have normalized spending levels that would have seemed genuinely absurd 20 years ago. The social cost of appearing ordinary has never felt higher. And yet the mathematics of wealth have not changed by a single variable. Spend less than you earn. Invest the difference in boring, low-cost instruments. Be patient across decades, not quarters. Let compounding do what no income can replicate. 10 years from now, the people performing their consumption for an audience that isn't really watching will still be performing it. Still financing lifestyles that require every dollar they earn to maintain. Still one job loss, one medical bill, one unexpected expense away from a crisis that their appearance of success cannot protect them from. And you could be somewhere else entirely, not because you suffered, not because you denied yourself everything, but because you understood, earlier than most, that the game being played loudly all around you was never designed to make the players wealthy. It was designed to make them spend. The person who sees that clearly and acts accordingly and tells no one and waits, that person ends up with something most people spend their entire lives chasing without ever quite reaching. Not just money, actual freedom. The quiet, unannounced, completely unimpressive kind that lets you do whatever you want, whenever you want, without needing anyone's permission or approval or awareness. That's what's on the other side of this. Whether you get there is entirely up to you.